So, talking about running ultra, and now that I mentioned Lewis, it brings me up to your quest for the 100 miler. And one of
Yes.
Lewis's races is in there, the Born to Run Ultra. And was that your first or second attempt?
That was my first attempt, and it's absolutely hilarious how it all came about.
Okay, can you give us
So,
a download on that? What happened? How
yeah.
did
So
you?
in 2021, so literally the week after I left work and I was starting my retirement journey, my best friend Carrie and I told her, I was like, hey, I got reached out to about this Born to Run event. They need volunteers for this race. Do you want to go volunteer? She's like, sure. Because that's what we do. Like if we're not gonna run, we're participating. Because and this is total sidebar, but if you're an ultra runner, a trail runner, volunteer,
Oh yeah,
volunteer, be involved, right? And it's not because like for anything more than the fact that like one, you can selfishly like pick brains of other runners, but two, like it's so much fun and you get to be involved. So we volunteered. And so we show up and we're working the check-in booth with Beverly, and we don't know what's going on. And next thing you know, Beverly brings up this discussion about how her husband is Luis Escobar. And we're like, oh, okay, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And then she's like, my husband, have you girls read the book Born to Run? All of a sudden, clicked.
yeah.
We're like, this is the legit Born to Run. This is legit. We're talking to Lewis's wife. This is legit Luis Escobar. This is the guy who we know and like idolize. And we're just like, oh my God. So this was 2021. So we met Luis Escobar and he was shocked. He was shocked. He's like, wait, you're just volunteering here? Like you're not running? We're like, no, we just wanted to hang out. So he took us around on a Jeep, took us down into the village, hung out. And like that was our first experience at Born to Run. Highly recommend this event. Absolutely fun. It's going on this weekend. I think they still need volunteers, hint, hint, wink, wink. But
Yeah.
highly recommend it for future reference. He's got a variety of distances and you camp on the ranch. Like you can't have any more fun than that. So fast forward to 2023, my goal, my quest was to get a buckle, and I wanted a buckle to honor my 40th year of a life. And so Born to Run was my first one and my first attempt. And again, walking into this quest, not fully understanding, knowing um the ultra and how the body works and the mindset. And I ended up succumbing to a little bit of heat illness. I didn't and what I knew then is not what I know now. And what I know now is that you can bounce back from that bonk.
Mm.
But at the time we took it safe and there's nothing wrong with that. So I took my first DNF at mile 70. Um, and honestly, like when I look back on it, there's no regrets, there's no emotions, nothing hard about what that was. I did it because I know that at the end of the day, the race is always going to be there. I want to be able to be there too. So
Right.
when I look at DNFs, I look at like, I didn't DNF, I still completed a distance.
Yeah.
I might not have completed the goal distance, but I still completed a shit ton of fucking miles.
Yeah. You
And
almost ran 3 marathons in a row. So
yeah, exactly.
I
So
laugh.
I'm not gonna,
How can I feel like a failure? Only in ultra can you run 3 marathons in a row and then still be like, oh, I didn't, I didn't do very well.
yeah, yeah. So like, and I had to sit back and like, of course there's a little bit of disappointment. It's my first attempt. I wanted it, but I was like, you know what? The race is always going to be here. I
Mm,
want to be able to do this healthily.
mm,
So by pulling chalks and saying like, look, I'm gonna call this quits. I wanted to play it safe. And I'm glad I did. I took lessons away from it, and I don't look back on those decisions as a negative thing. I take those lessons and I fast forwarded them.
mm.
So I did a couple other races, some redemption runs. I did take first place female at the Great Hill Ultra 100K, the inaugural event. Yeah, my first podium finish in an ultra. Um, that was man, if you're on the East Coast, y'all need to do the Great Hill Ultra. That's all I'm going to say. It was phenomenal. Um, don't let the East Coast mountains fool you. Where they lack altitude, they make up for an attitude. There's a lot of volume. Um, and that was a huge pick me up. I definitely needed that redemption run. I didn't seek podium. I just wanted to do well. And so at that point, I had already signed up for my next 100 attempt, the Mid-State Massive 100, which runs from New Hampshire down through the center body of Massachusetts, so north to south to the tri-state border of Massachusetts, Connecticut, and Rhode Island.
Wow.
And again, brutal. The East Coast trails are they're something else.
That's a
Um,
that's a point to point race, 100 miles,
it
point to
is
point.
point to point.
That always
Mhm.
intrigues. That's really intriguing. I like that point to point action. But so
Same.
what happened there?
Oh man. Well, shall we start with 24 hours of rain?
Wow.
So it started raining before the race even began, and everything was just swampy. And then like through the course of the race, like I ran out of food by mile 70, and I was just I had it. I was done. The lack of food was my excuse to pull chalks. And it is a course that is highly recommended to have a crew, and I've never had a crew up to this point outside of my first ultra back in 2019. So I was flying solo. My drop bag wasn't for another 10 miles, and the aid stations just didn't have what I was needing. Like I needed like solid foods, not cookies and crackers or chips. Like I wanted like a quesadilla. I wanted like food.
Right.
And I had gone through my emergency stores too. So I was out of food.
Okay.
Uh, so and it was brutal. Like through the course, like I don't know why. I was trying to avoid the puddles. My feet were getting wet anyway. The rain didn't bother me. Why I avoided the puddles, I don't know, but it fatigued me a lot more. So a lot of muscle fatigue, just overall. A lot of lessons I took away from there. And again, like I wanted to be mad. But I wasn't. I couldn't let myself be mad. I completed 71 miles now. And so it's 1 mile longer.
Yeah.
Um, and the course was very challenging. It was the first time I'd ever really run in the rain um for that period of time. So it was tough. It was definitely not for the weak. So kudos to every person that pushed through and finished that course. That was impeccable. Um, but the quest didn't die. It did not die.
Oh, how
Um,
about what you just completed, the Folsom
yeah.
one, third
I
place.
just did. Yes. Yes, I did. And that took some time. There was like right after Mid-State Massive and right after so I went and worked Moab right after I did the Mid-State Massive. I worked Moab 240,
That's
came
240.
home, packed up and rolled out to move here to Colorado.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, I'm eyeballing. I was actually looking at Sedona or Folsom, and so I signed up for Folsom, but in between I wanted to get like a test run. So I ran Arches 50 miler hosted by Mad Moose, fantastic event, by the way.
Nice.
Denise, who's the race director, she puts on some amazing events.
Okay.
And man, they got one hell of a cutoff. I like moving here to Colorado, I went from like 300 to 400 base elevation to like 6,200 feet.
Yeah.
And so I had like 2 months to prep for a 50 miler, which was going to be at 4,500 feet of base altitude with a 12-hour cutoff, which for me
Wow.
was super
Yeah.
tight.
That's a tight cutoff. 12 hours. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I set a new PR there. So I ran 11:30. And I had a crew. Candace Burt came down and crewed me, and I was just so grateful. She was so kind to be there for me. And some other folks on my team with Primal Run Coaching were down there, which was awesome to spend quality time with them and do this event together. And so that really set the bar for me. That really set a line of confidence. So when I came to tackle Folsom, I was still, I mean, I get my taper tantrums. So the insecurities were definitely high because this is round three. That I was going to tackle 100. And but I wanted it.
Mm,
And my coach and I, Aaron Stacy, he and I had so many talks over the last few months. And, I was digging deep, like, why do I want to run 100? Why do I want to do this? And he simply said something like this, because you can,
amazing.
and left it at that. And so when I approached this, like, one, I was like, of course, weather watching, and the weather was looking to be like 70 to 80 degrees until like the 4 days prior, when it changed to, oh yeah, 50 degrees and sideways rain on this day. So I was like, great, rain, I can handle this. So yeah, I went in with a very present mindset.
Yeah,
Um and that got me through. Like,
yeah.
I was very grateful. Candace and her boyfriend Adam came down to crew me. It was very sweet of them. And then my friend John, who I've met through the 200s, he's a phenomenal athlete. He's one of the reasons why I say, like, people, like, eliminate the word can't from your vocabulary. He's 60 years old, retired 31 years from the police force,
Wow.
runs 200-mile distances.
Um,
And he came out and paced me for 35 miles to the finish. And, he tells me all the time how honored he was to, this was his first time pacing someone to their first 100-mile finish.
yeah.
um and it was my first time with a pacer, and so learning curves for me. I've never had a pacer, so this is really interesting. But it's because of them, and it was because of, like, the lessons I took away from the first two attempts. And I call them lessons. They're not DNFs, they're lessons. And carry those things forward. And the only number I wanted to know when John and I started on the course at mile 35, I was like, the only number I want to know is when I pass mile 71. I don't want to know any other number. And so, like, we get to mile 75, and I was struggling a little bit with eating, but I was still like, I need to eat, and I need to eat because, like, that's what you got to do, and I made a pact with myself, like, if I feel any other emotion other than fucking happy, like, I'm eating. If I'm walking, I'm eating. If I'm crawling up a hill, I'm eating. If I'm squatting in a bush, I have a sandwich in my mouth. Like I got food.
Wow.
And and like, having the crew there was super helpful. Candace was really supportive in making sure I was changing my shirts frequently just to stay warm and dry. And then finally I got to change into dry clothes, which are great. And the temps dropped to the 30s at night. So it was pretty cold for Folsom, California. But when that sun came up, and, like, we could see the stars at night, and you just knew that the hardest part was over, but the next hardest part had only just begun, because the real race only begins at like mile 75, mile 80. And I slowed down a lot, but I was still headstrong. Like, I am not calling it. Like, I don't care how shuffly I go, we are going. And and it was when we hit mile 89, it was the first time I, like, sat in a chair, and I just wanted to go. I was like, just get me the fuck out of here. Like, I just want to go. Like, I'm here. Like, I just want to finish. Um, and it was like the longest 11-mile trek to the finish. Because it was a lot of road, and I was just like, the fatigue was hitting, and I was just so tired of eating. My body was just like, I don't want to eat anymore, but you have to keep force feeding it.
Yeah.
Um, and Candace met me at like mile 95-ish, and she was wearing a onesie, but she stuffed most of the unicorn onesie in her pack. So she wore the hood, and it was absolutely adorable. And but I couldn't formulate, like, a smile anymore. I was so headstrong. Like, she came out, she gave me a hug to run me in the last couple miles with John. And all I could do is just, like, point my fingers. Just like, let's fucking go. Like, I just want to go. Like, I don't want to stop. I don't want to think. I just want to go. And yeah, when we rounded that corner, we had that last, like, quarter mile lap. around the parking lot. Like I that stride came back, that energy was hype. And um anybody who's in the who knows, like Ray Sanchez is the race director for this, and it was an honor to run this race. Like the guy is an OG. He was the 23rd man in the country to have completed 100 milers. He's got bad water finishes, and here I am, like rolling through his race line. And I didn't know who he was when I treated him at Bigfoot. I was asking him all the dumb questions like, oh, have you run a 200? Like, like all these dumb questions. But to be there, and he knows me as Thor, which is so sweet. And finish his race, and his race be my first 100-mile finish. And almost nailed the time. I was 26 minutes off. My goal was 30 hours, but hey, 26 minutes is a shave. And I took third place female, um, which was a huge deal. I waited a year and a half for this, and it was worth it,
Yeah.
to the folks.
And I saw the video of you finishing, and I don't know if it was from Candace's phone or somebody's phone, but that like wailing, you letting out this emotional, just like letting it all.
Yeah,
Oh my gosh! Like I
yeah.
actually screen captured that. I have it somewhere. I'm going to post it. But it was, yeah, it's just so emotional. Like it's just such. I love it. I absolutely love it. Like I've I've done 100 miler. It was like a self-supported. It wasn't even a race. Like I actually ran 50 miles from the ocean up to the top of this mountain, turned around and ran 50 miles back. And I
Wow.
yeah, and I remember that feeling of getting to the end and just being completely broken and spent and
Mhm.
laying there and my thoughts and emotions. But what were your thoughts? Like what were your thoughts when you were at the end, and what emotions were there for you, if I could ask?
Yeah, I was very present
Mm,
95% of the race. Very, very present. I think I started to really, when I stopped eating, the last like 10-ish miles, or slowed down on my eating, is when things really started to come up.
mm,
And I had found out at mile 75, I was in third place. And so like that was some motivation, but 25 miles and a 100-mile course at the tail end of a race is a long trek, and anything can happen. So I didn't want that to be like my drive. I wanted me to be my drive. So there was definitely like finding a balance of like just stay present, stay focused, and stay intent, and only focus on you and your race. Don't worry about what others are doing. Don't worry about others. But I was still like, I want to fucking do this. Like I've been wanting this for so long, and not a podium, but like I'm here. Like I'm gonna take a fucking podium. Like this is a chance I've never really experienced like in this distance. Um so like I was trying to stay in between, but as I slowed down on my eating, a lot of the emotions started to stir. And so John would take notice that like I take that pause, and you just stop and you do that hinge where you're like bowing on your knees. And I'd be like, take a deep breath, a sigh, and he's like, well, if you need to ugly cry. And I was like, no, I'm not gonna ugly cry. I'm gonna hold myself until I finish. Like, no, it's energy I need. Um, and so I just kept holding on to those and like refueling myself with that to keep going. And even through all the tough conditions, I was like, I want to be here. I want to be here. I want to experience this. There was something that Candace had said in a post some time ago, about learning how to get uncomfortable in discomfort. And I wanted to be there. And so, your normal aches and pains, I was like, no, no, I am not giving up on this. Like nothing is going to tear me away from this right now. So I just kept shuffling. And when I would feel that stir, like I could feel that bulge in my throat, like shit, like I want to, I want to vomit. I want to like vomit, cry, and then I could feel it. I was like swallow it down. And then when Candace came up, and she gave me a hug, and her at like mile 95, 96, and she gave me a hug. It was seeping in, and I was like, no. And that's why I was like, I gave her the fingers. I was like, just fucking go. Like, I just want to go. And I didn't talk. Like, and she was like, she had said something about like, well, if we're disturbing you or whatever, if we're talking, I was like, no, just you guys talk. I was like, just stay with me. I was like, I'm here. That would be like the only thing I said. I was like, I'm here. Like, I'm here. And that was just me just reminding myself to stay present.
Yeah.
And I gotta say, like in all the other events I've ever done, staying present is probably one of the most challenging things.
Yeah.
To avoid everything else and just stay here in the moment.
Oh my
And
God. So yeah, that's I mean that's it's very natural to have that mind drift, and it's
yeah.
often not the most helpful thing at times for our
Mm.
minds to drift. But so do you have any like tricks on how do you stay present? Like how do you stay grounded in the moment?
Yeah. So one thing is like listen to what your body's telling you. When you start to drift ahead, you can sometimes feel that stress.
Mm,
So take a step back.
mhm.
And the pain's gonna be there. Like, like I'm sorry, your feet are gonna hurt. Like your
Right.
ankles are gonna hurt. Your muscles might cramp.
Yeah.
Like and fuel. If you're sad, eat. If you're tired, eat. If you're walking, eat. If you're crawling up a hill, eat. If you squat in a bush, eat.
Yeah.
Eat. Those things they will raise your endorphins,
Mhm.
and it will help you stay happier.
Mm.
I'm not a trail math person. I don't want to know how far I am. I don't want to look at my mileage. When I get to an aid station, I just want to know how far to the next one. And that's
Yeah.
all I want to know. Um,
Do
so
you,
like
you have a watch like I have? Do you even look at that thing? You put
rarely,
tape over it?
rarely. Yep. I try not to look at it because I don't want to stress. I
Wow.
honestly, because I've tried that like years ago when I started in the road running, I used to worry about the pace and worry about the time and whatever. But at the end of the day, one, I'm not getting paid to do this. I volunteered and subjected myself to do this. So I want to have a good time. This is my race. This isn't anybody else's. So I'm not getting paid to do this.
Yeah.
I subjected myself to this.
Right.
So what the hell am I going to stress over this? And then two, it's like, if the only thing I need to be worried about is cutoff times. And
Mm,
until somebody tells me that I cannot make it through,
mm,
I'm just going to keep going.
nice.
And so learning how to appreciate and be grateful for the
Mm,
fact that your body is doing what you're asking it to do. Like you're taxing it in so many different ways. And it's like that was the one thing when I crossed that finish line is like I'm not like a praying person, but I was definitely giving praise to what my body just did for me. And I fight a lot of insecurities, physical insecurities, like I don't have a six pack, I don't have firm body, whatever. All these things that like we
got
all
the body
have
of an
ideas.
ultra runner. You got the body of an ultra runner.
Exactly. I've got a pillow and I'm okay with it. But
Yeah, me
like,
too.
yeah, but this body I put through 20 years of service, this body that I have tested from time and time again, this body that has smoked cigarettes, done drugs, worked on a flight deck, inhaled shit, drank hydraulic fluid, and has been beaten and been broken down. This body just got me through 100 miles. And it's those moments when you're taking those baby steps and you get to every aid station to praise that and say thank you to yourself, to your body. And that's the presence. That's saying I can do this. And by taking care of your throne, you're able to continue moving.
How do we take all of this that you've done in those 30 hours and 26 minutes out there in Folsom, and how do we take that off the course and into the rest of our lives, into our daily lives?
Mm.
What does that look like for you?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I correlate a lot of what I do in trail running and ultra running to life in general. Peaks and valleys,
Mm.
hike the hills. So
Yeah,
conserve your energy on the way up. Um, because you're gonna wanna you're gonna wanna use it for the way down. But
yeah.
when you get to the top of the hill, praise yourself for the hard work you just did.
Enjoy the view.
Because that's not easy.
Yeah,
And when you're in that valley, you're not at the lowest low because the next direction you have to go is up or straight across.
yeah.
So, um, find that gratitude that you are where you are meant to be. And thirdly, like as hard as they are, we all have choices.
Mm.
We all have choices, and those choices always come with consequences.
Hmm.
When you own your consequences and you accept those things, you're accepting what you're about to go into. So go forth with a full heart, but
Mm.
also don't forget those that are willing to go along with you. And don't
Yes.
be afraid to ask for help.
Oh my God.
And yeah, and and go in with the drive, knowing you can go through this because you choose to go through this. There have been points in our lives where we have been subjected to doing things, us in the Navy, where we had no options. We had options. The consequences were greater than the options, so we do what we're told. But now on this side, I have more options. I have more choices. So those folks that can relate with maybe military service or those options or life options where the consequences were greater than the choices. So you were subjected to making those choices. Now you have options. Go forth with a full heart because you choose to. And because you choose to believe that you can, know that you will, and don't be afraid to ask for help. Those peaks can be very challenging at times to go up. So partner up, go with somebody, and in the ultras, sometimes you partner up with folks, just random strangers, and you suffer fest together.
Yeah, yeah,
And then you do, and you can do the same here.
yeah,
How many times we've all battled some things, our wounds, and we're trying to heal wounds, and we ask somebody for help to join us in that suffer fest to help us reach that apex. So when we're ready to crawl back down on the easy end, we can look back and say, I did this.
yeah. That's amazing. You're amazing. I'm so happy we had this conversation. Like, this is amazing. Yeah, and asking for help is so
Me
important, but I
too.
also just want to recognize too is like it's very difficult. I know it's difficult to do. It takes like a lot of courage to ask for help because oftentimes when we're really dysregulated, it's one of those first things. I know it's one of the first things for me that goes away when I start feeling terrible is I don't want to talk to anybody and I want to isolate.
Mhm.
Like sometimes I feel like the wounded lone animal that's gone off into the mountains to die on its own. And it's like, no, dude, you need
Yeah.
to somebody, you need to say something. So it's just like with the ultras as life is like find your crew, find your
Mhm.
pacers, find your pact. Know that you can ask silly questions and people will help you because people want. I mean, I think at the end of the day, folks really want. We really do want to help each other. It's we're all
Yeah.
altruistic beings and such. Really cool. This has been a great conversation.
This
You
has been
have
wonderful.
right now of being the longest podcast I think I've done, and I could stay probably another hour. But my family, I hear them stirring on the other side of this door, and I got a day ahead of me to. We have some things to take care of. Oi, yeah. So I don't think I hit you with this question before the podcast, which I've gone back and forth with. There's like one question I usually end the podcast with, and I will give credit where credit's due. I believe I stole this from Tim Ferriss, the Tim Ferriss podcast. But I sometimes give it to the guest beforehand, and sometimes I just hit them with it like on the spot. So I guess I didn't give it to you beforehand, so my bust. But anyway, I know you're, and this might be like, oh my God, this might be difficult for you because I follow you on Instagram and I see a lot of times you're doing a lot of quotes and a lot of, like, I see a lot of
Yeah.
stoic stuff, which I love and things like that. And in your stories and such, you normally have like a lot of quotes and such. So you don't have to pick any of those quotes, but it's the billboard question. The billboard question is you have a billboard, right? And a billion
Mhm.
people see this billboard. And you can have anything on this billboard you want. It can be an image, it can be a quote from somebody, it can be a quote from yourself, it can be anything on this billboard. But a billion people are going to see this billboard, just like this podcast. Joking. but, so if a billion people could see this message, what would it say?
Ooh, I don't need to think. I already know. So one, there's going to be a unicorn on it. So there's going to be a unicorn. But this is a phrase that I coined for many years, and I embrace sharing it. Like I said, I'm not a religious person, but I do have faith that tomorrow will be a better day. So what I would love to see on a billboard for all to see is simply the statement, "Come time, all will be as it is meant to be."
I love it. Thank you so
Mhm.
much, Tasha, for coming on today. This has been amazing.
This has
Yeah.
been wonderful, Chris. Thank you so much for having me. This has been an honor and a pleasure.
Yeah. Before we hop off, where can folks find you if they want to follow you and reach out to you? Instagram's the best place, you think?
Instagram is the best place. I am on Strava, not quite as often, but Instagram, LinkedIn. Yeah.
Yeah, so cool. What have you got coming next? Anything you want to promote?
DT.
Oh yeah, Destination Trail.
Yeah. Yes. Tahoe, Tahoe,
Nice.
Tahoe. We're looking for
Tyler.
volunteers. Come out to Tahoe. That's going to be mid-June. So if you guys want to come out, it's such a
Yeah,
great time. I have a
yeah.
huge summer ahead of traveling with different race circuits, but DT, let's roll. Tahoe's next.
And I'll shout out to that too is volunteers. Like even if you're not a runner or anything, like it is so worth it to volunteer at these events. Like you are going to see real life drama unfolding in front of you. You're going to see emotions. You're going to see some things you've probably never seen before.
Yeah,
if you
yeah,
come
it's such a grand
out,
time.
oh my god, it's so much fun. I used to volunteer at races prior to running ultras. I used to race at Kira. I volunteered at Kira Henninger's races out in Southern California, like
Oh,
Bay
nice.
Miller and Leona Divide and places such as that. So
Amazing.
cool. We could talk forever, but I gotta roll.
No, we could. This is awesome. It's just so awesome to have a brother here and doing what you're doing. And it's such an honor to be here with you to share this and be on the same wavelength with you. And to see that, like, I think some of my holdup was always being like, what am I going to be like when I retire, and after. And it's so beautiful to see other folks that have transitioned in such a healthy way and set the example for our other brothers and sisters and other um, you know, uh, service members to see that, hey, you will thrive. You just you got to pick and choose the right paths.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
it's beautiful. So thank you for doing what you've done.
Thank you so much. You're warming my heart. You're bringing me to tears again. This is the second time. All right.
Much to you and your family.
Thank you so much. Peace. Be well.